All right, so you're looking for some insights on the recent election and what it might mean for the future.
Definitely.
And, well, our source today is this recorded commentary.
Okay.
And it offers a really interesting perspective on this idea of a
Huh.
return to normalcy. I think you'll find it pretty thought-provoking.
Yeah, I think what's interesting right off the bat
Yeah.
is how the commentator sort of defines normalcy.
Right.
They contrast the peaceful transition of power with all these like horror show scenarios that
Right.
were, kind of predicted before the election.
Yeah, and I think they're pushing back against specific media narratives
Oh, yeah, for sure.
that were circulating at the time.
Yeah.
What I found really interesting is
Yeah.
they actually get into some specifics about those predictions.
They do. They mention fears of like widespread civil unrest and challenges to the electoral process, even like potential economic instability. And what's really striking is how they use the actual outcome of the election, with its smooth transition and lack of major disruptions to kind of debunk these predictions.
Yeah, it's almost like they're saying, look, reality didn't match the hype.
Exactly.
And they use that to build their argument for this return to normalcy
Yeah.
under Trump's leadership.
Right. It's like a strategic way of framing their perspective as grounded in fact,
Yes.
rather than, speculation or fear-mongering, which then sets the stage for this broader argument about a cultural shift back towards these more traditional values.
Okay, so then they move on to these really interesting details about Trump and Biden's interactions.
Yeah.
Things you might have seen in the news but maybe didn't think too much about at the time.
Right, like they're meeting in the Oval Office
Right.
after the election.
Yeah.
The commentator points out that it was amicable, even cordial.
Yeah.
They even point out how Jill Biden appeared cozy,
Right.
sitting next to Trump at that Notre Dame event.
And they have this playful tone, like suggesting that maybe Biden secretly voted for Trump. Obviously, that's meant to be humorous.
Right.
But it does highlight the contrast between these seemingly positive public interactions and the often really heated rhetoric
Uh-huh.
that we saw during the campaign.
It's interesting to think about how these small moments can influence public perception.
Yes.
Even if they don't reflect, behind-the-scenes realities, they contribute to a certain narrative about the new administration.
And speaking of narratives, they really latch onto this quote from Trump about unity through success.
Yeah.
It's like they see it as the core message of his presidency.
And if you kind of connect this to the bigger picture, it's fascinating to see how political rhetoric can shape national sentiment. It sets expectations, influences behavior, and can even contribute to a sense of shared purpose.
So then the commentator brings up some specific examples of what they consider to be a return to justice and normalcy.
Right.
And this is where things get even more interesting.
Yeah.
They focus on two cases in New York City.
Okay. The acquittal of Daniel Penny and the arrest of that healthcare executive's murderer.
Right. And it's important to remember that they're presenting their interpretation of these events.
For sure.
And they are clearly in favor of Daniel Penny and what they view as traditional legal processes.
Right.
They present his acquittal as a victory for justice,
Uh-huh.
as a sign that the system is working as intended.
It's interesting how they use these cases to connect to their broader point about a return to normalcy.
Yeah.
For them, it seems to imply a society where the rule of law is upheld and justice is served, regardless of political pressure or public opinion.
But it does raise questions about how different people define justice and what influences those perceptions.
Absolutely, and I think that's something for you to consider as you're
Yes.
listening.
Yeah.
How do these examples resonate with your own understanding of justice and the role of the legal system?
Yeah. Are there other perspectives on these cases that might challenge the commentator's view?
Exactly. It's important to remember there are multiple sides to every story.
Right.
Always.
Okay. So let's keep going.
Yeah, let's dive into the next part.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
And they start talking about the restoration of Notre Dame Cathedral
Right.
and Trump being there.
Uh-huh.
And this is where they start to lay out this really interesting argument
Okay.
about this potential cultural shift.
Yeah, it's interesting how they weave together these kind of seemingly disparate threads.
Right.
They see the restoration of Notre Dame as more than just a rebuilding project.
Yeah.
They frame it as this symbol of cultural renewal, a reawakening of traditional values, and even like a rejection of what they call the secularist tendencies of the left.
And Trump being at the ceremony becomes this incredibly symbolic moment for them.
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, look, this isn't just some fringe idea. The leader of the free world is here standing in solidarity with this vision of a return to tradition.
It is a powerful image.
Yes.
And it speaks to their broader point about Trump's potential role as cultural leader.
Right.
They seem to believe that he's not just a political figure, but someone who can shape societal values and norms.
And they contrast this very deliberately with what they see as the more secular worldview of liberal progressives.
Right.
It's like they're drawing a line in the sand,
Uh-huh.
suggesting that there are these two fundamentally different visions for the future of American society.
And it's interesting to think about what they mean by secularist tendencies.
Yeah.
They seem to be referring to this perceived decline in the influence of religion
Oh.
on public life and the shift towards a more individualistic,
Yeah.
less tradition-bound morality.
They even bring up Trump's speech at the Al Smith dinner,
Mhm.
where he talks about helping Catholic charities.
Right.
This becomes another piece of evidence for them
Yeah.
that Trump is actively trying to restore the role of religion in society.
And this ties back to their earlier point about Trump's message of unity.
Right.
They seem to believe that a shared religious foundation can be a unifying force, bringing people together despite their differences.
It's a thought-provoking argument.
It is.
Makes you wonder,
Mm.
is it really possible for religion to play that kind of unifying role
Right.
in such a diverse and polarized society?
And that's the key question.
Yeah.
And it's one that they don't shy away from.
Right.
They actually point to Trump's success in winning the Catholic vote as evidence that there's this shift happening
Right.
in American society.
Contrasting that with Biden's performance in 2020.
Exactly.
It's like they're saying, look, the numbers speak for themselves. People are hungry for this return to traditional values.
But of course, it's important to remember that interpreting election results is always complex.
Of course.
There's so many factors at play.
Right. It's not as simple as saying, well, this group voted this way, so they must all believe this.
Right.
But it does raise interesting questions
It does.
about the evolving role of religion in American politics and culture.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating to see how they're connecting this to their broader argument about a return to normalcy.
Right.
For them, it seems that normalcy involves a more prominent role for religion in public life.
Which again challenges the assumption that normalcy is this fixed,
Right.
universally understood concept.
Yeah,
It clearly means different things to different people.
for sure.
And those meanings are often shaped by our own values, experiences, and beliefs.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so valuable.
Yeah.
It's not about agreeing or disagreeing with their perspective.
Right.
It's about using their insights as a springboard to explore these bigger questions about what normalcy means, how it's defined, and who gets to define it.
So we're heading into the last part of this commentary, and
Okay.
it seems like they're trying to tie everything together,
Yeah.
all these different threads that they've been talking about.
Right. And I think this is where you really see their optimism about the future.
Yeah.
They seem genuinely convinced that, Trump's leadership is going to usher in this era of stability and unity,
Right.
this return to normalcy, as they define it.
Right. And they point to some specific things, as evidence.
Yeah.
They mentioned the peaceful transition of power, the interactions between Trump and Biden,
Mm-hmm.
the results of those legal cases in New York,
Right.
and even the restoration of Notre Dame.
Right. It's like they're building a case
Yes.
brick by brick.
To support their argument.
Exactly.
And it seems like that foundation for that case is their belief in Trump's message of
Yeah.
unity through success.
Right.
They're saying that by focusing on these tangible results,
Yeah.
he can bridge these divides in American society
Uh-huh.
and create a more harmonious future.
And they have this really interesting phrase to describe this.
Oh, yeah. What is it?
They call it a politics of aspiration,
Oh, wow.
which I think really captures their sense of hopefulness
Yeah.
about what's possible
Oh,
under his leadership.
but they do acknowledge the challenges.
They do.
They know it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, restoring normalcy is not going to be a walk in the park.
Right. It's going to take effort
It is.
and compromise.
Yeah.
And a willingness to kind of move beyond all these divisions
Right.
that we've seen
It
in recent years.
And I think they believe that this is where Trump's leadership will be tested.
Uh-huh.
Can he rise above all the conflict?
Right.
Can he unite a divided nation?
Yeah.
Can he deliver on his promises of a brighter future?
Yeah.
These are the big questions.
That's right. So where does this leave us?
Right.
We've listened to this commentary. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts?
What do you think about this idea of a return to normalcy?
Yeah.
I mean, what does that even mean?
Yeah. What does that even mean to you?
Yeah.
It's a question worth thinking about.
It is, and I think their insights give us a good place to start.
Yeah.
It encourages us to think critically about, these complex factors
Right.
that shape our understanding of normalcy,
Right.
to challenge our assumptions,
Wow.
and to have these, thoughtful conversations about the future of American society.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah.
What might normalcy look like in this new era?
Right. What opportunities might it present?
Yeah.
What challenges might we face? I think
Right.
as, we heard in the commentary,
Yeah.
these are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves.
Yeah. That's a really great point. I think that's a perfect place to wrap up
Yeah.
this deep dive.
Sounds good.